everyone. I'm Adam Gordon, one of the organizers of Ed North. The Twin Cities EdTech community got a lot richer when Maria Burns Ortiz relocated here with her company, 7 Generation Games. She leads a panel this morning called Too Many Children Left Behind, Improving Equity in Education Through Innovation. Her extraordinary panel this morning is going to be investigating how EdTech can help narrow the achievement gap in K-12 through engaging, diverse, and culturally relevant curriculum. So I turn it over now to Maria.
Thank you, Adam. So yes, I'm Maria Burns Ortiz. I'm co-founder and CEO of 7 Generation Games, where we make immersive video games and interactive apps aimed at overcoming barriers to success, one math problem at a time. And our recent project, Growing Math, we're actually working as a COVID rapid response grant aimed at coming up with solutions that can be applied in any community, in any setting. And I like to talk about underserved, underrepresented, and under-resourced, right? The needs that kids have that aren't being met. And sometimes you hear, especially when you're talking about EdTech and investors, and they say, oh, minority communities, underserved communities, and they don't hear dollar signs, right? It's not this big, exciting moment. But the reality is, what is technology about? What are startups about? It's about meeting needs, right? Finding these pain points and how we can use those, the technology that we have to jump off and solve those. So I'm really excited for my panel here today. Next to me here is Shanita Young, and I'm just gonna read their bios because they're incredible. But she's the Wiconí Wasté Youth Program Coordinator for the Little Earth Residents Association, and as part of the organization's educational team, she runs the mentoring programs for Little Earth high school students, ensuring students have the support they need to succeed in and outside of the classroom. Previously, she was the American Indian Multicultural Liaison for St. Louis Park Public Schools and the chairperson of the district's American Indian Parent Committee. She spent time working with the Summer Learning Program at Central Community Center, and she grew up in the Twin Cities area and is an enrolled member of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. Dr. Michael Wulf, over here, is the founder of the Minnesota STEM Partnership, a nonprofit initiative that provides access to high-tech activities in STEM for K-12 students and their families within the Twin Cities and across Minnesota to address access and opportunity disparities in BIPOC communities. Michael's also Chief Executive Officer of a technical and STEM education consultant business, Web Demos, focused on enabling small business and nonprofits to access rapidly expanding digital environment. A product of the inner city neighborhood, originally from St. Paul's Rondo Summit University area, Wulf credits his community with helping him define as an early entrepreneur and leader and instilling a commitment to giving back. He holds a Doctor of Education in Organizational Leadership from Argosy University. And I want to say we were supposed to have a third panelist with us who could not be here today because he's a principal and he's doing what principals do, right? He had a teacher unexpectedly out, and so he jumped in to assist his students any way possible. You know, one of the things that Startup Week talks about is innovation. And I really want to focus on how innovation, if we only talk about it through the lens of technology, alone is not a solution, right? If it was, our third panelist would have his robot teacher, and he would be here, right? And anyone who's ever had to deal with a classroom knows that's laughable because classroom management isn't something you can just solve with technology. So I really want to jump into it here, where we talk about technology's made huge advances over the past decade. But when you look at K-12 student outcomes, we've not seen progress, and especially when it comes to the disparities in education. And I am curious, when we look at Indigenous, Latino, and Black students, these gaps have not narrowed. If technology was a cure-all or a cure-most, we would see that solution. So I want to know, what are one or two of the biggest educational obstacles you see in the students or youth that you work with? What are those challenges? And they don't have to be necessarily centered around technology.
Ladies first.
I think seeing themselves in the curriculum, in the staff. So,
Yeah.
I would concur, definitely personal identity mapping, the ability for them to envision and visualize what their futures may look like, and also those brand new opportunities that they may not be aware of, seeing it through other people that look like them. Or I would also offer the same interests that they have, because I also believe that with technology, they're already well enabled with technology, from the phones to everything, so they want to see other people that are doing things that they can identify with.
Through your work, can you give us an example of what's worked, what's been effective when we look at helping youth, especially from the communities that you're not only work in, but that you're from, right? What has worked? I guess sometimes we spend so much time thinking about, here's the problem, and this isn't what's working, and here's... So what has worked that you've seen?
Asking them what they want and what their needs are and things that they want to see, giving them new opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have.
I would say being able to sit down with them shoulder to shoulder and encourage them to give them the confidence from their perspective. And I don't think we take a lot of time being teachers to be able to have the time to work across that. And since we're more of an after-school program, we have great volunteers and others that can take the time to partner with them to help them across those thresholds.
And that's something too, just jumping off from that, the importance of, we talk so much about technology and so much focus is on the classroom. How can we integrate it in classrooms? And both of you work with also enrichment programs, after-school programs. Can you talk a little bit about the roles that those are playing in communities and helping close those gaps?
All right, go ahead. Well, I'm the after-school guy. I believe that they play a critical role. Otherwise, I wouldn't be personally involved in this. After school and all those precious moments that they're spending, they could be spending them anywhere doing anything. And in the communities that we're attempting to serve, the deeper communities, not necessarily the privileged BIPOC students that have access to these types of programs, but those students are oftentimes off doing things that they may not or shouldn't be doing because of too much downtime. So those after-school programs and those weekend programs, I believe, play a critical role in and outside of standard public school district community ed. So we are not associated or affiliated directly with the school system. So those types of programs play a critical role. And there's a lot of great programs out there.
And I'm going to jump on you because you had the mentoring program too this summer, and talk about what the importance of that is, why you think that those experiences are necessary for the youth you work with.
Well, we had a summer internship, and 4 days of the week, we gave them different opportunities every day. There was a career lunch, which exposed them to different careers. There was Money Matters, and that helped them to learn how to save and where money can go. And then we had the digital game design workshop with you, and that exposed them to what goes into game design, having real-time suggestions that were applied right there. It let them have the opportunity to see if this is something that they weren't interested in or not. And then we got to do college visits, and we even had a opportunity for them to save money to get their driver's permit and then just only pay half of it, and then we would pay the other half. So.
And so much of what you do as well, I know we were talking a little bit before the session, is access to these opportunities that they don't necessarily, get otherwise, right? And how important that is, because sometimes, just walking into a tech company can be overwhelming, or walking into that situation feeling like, everybody's this secret genius. And sometimes I joke, no, they're not, and just that opportunity to have that access and how important that is, and to give kids that confidence. I know that's something you guys work with a lot.
Yes, absolutely. We also infuse, so we don't necessarily make it a class or make it feel a little bit cumbersome, like they're actually going to school. What we try to do is infuse professional development along the way. So they're being mentored and partnered by professionals, but we also talk about behavior and talk about other opportunities and what those experiences are like. And although we haven't gone out as far as going into the corporations, I know a lot of corporations have asked us to come visit, but that is on our horizon. And I think those students receive a large awakening when they realize that they can actually do these things. And they're actually being told by people that are doing them as they share their experiences, like, well, I didn't even think I was going to go to finish high school, let alone go to college. And here you have somebody that didn't go to college, but they got the inspiration to become a technologist, to become an educator even, and they gave back that way. They went on to pursue certification. So I'm a big believer in continuous learning and lifelong learning, but you don't necessarily have to put them into a box, either a certificate or a 2-year or 4-year program. I believe that there is a lot of life experience that students can bring. They will reach some point in time where those pieces of paper will become essential to their ability to advance, But this is about innovation as well, right? I've also seen so many young people that are so innovative at such a young age that they have everything that it takes to succeed in life. They just need support and confidence and the ability for others like them to invest in them emotionally, physically, all of those other qualities that the mentors and volunteers give back.
You talked about, reflective, right? Seeing yourself in that curriculum and the content. And I actually have two directions I want to take this. And the first one is, to be honest, the vast majority of people who are creating educational technology do not reflect many of the communities that we're talking about, right? That we're in. I mean, if you could look at the numbers of whether it's Blacks, Latinos, Indigenous, in tech, we're talking single digits, right? And these numbers are really frustrating. But so when you're, and yet they're the ones who are creating technology for classrooms, right? That are going to close these gaps in theory. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you find when it comes to youth in your community, especially when you're looking at maybe whether it's products or projects or curriculum? What are some of those misconceptions that you run up against when it comes to your youth?
I know I'm nervous.
No, don't. It's just us. We're all friends.
Oh, it's the camera.
Yeah.
And you know I can talk.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I missed the question.
Oh, the misconceptions that you run into, right? There's a lot of misconceptions around youth, especially, Indigenous youth. You work with Indigenous youth. What are some of the big misconceptions that really frustrate you? For example, one of the things I work with a lot of English language learners, right? And it's not that their parents don't want to help them with their homework, right? But if you came from, Mexico and you never mastered fractions, no matter what you want to do, you're not going to be able to help your child do that, right? And especially then you throw another language into it. And so it's one of the things that drives me crazy is this idea of, they just need better involved parents or better help from their parents. No, that's not necessarily what the solution is, and not taking that into account, because just because I can help my daughter multiply fractions doesn't mean that other kids who don't have that support, it's not that their parents don't want to, but some of those opportunities. So what are some of the misconceptions that you find around the youth in your community that just drive you crazy?
Just not understanding their lived experience. What's going on at home, what's going on in the community, the realness of the crime, the realness of lack of trust. So those are things that probably people don't think about.
Those are definitely some very deep areas. Looking at my personal experience, and I would say that I went into the organization 4 years ago very naive, very underprepared, but it was just one retired guy trying to make a difference. And I believe you had Mondo Davidson on earlier, and he's been one of our big engagement. He could talk. I mean, that guy, he's really fantastic at it. So I'm going to attempt to live up to the Mondoisms. However, I think for me the biggest frustration is the students not being able to see themselves and actually taking it layer by layer by layer deeper to say, oh, that is what this is. And so the misconceptions are they actually have everything that it takes. It's just a matter of taking the time to get at their level, to be able to speak their language, to actually engage with them, trust, right? So that they know you're not just a one and done. None of us really want to have the fly-by-night scenarios, right? And building that trust requires time and energy and consistency and perseverance and the discipline for the adults to remain engaged, because along the way, our students are going to trip, they're going to fall, they're going to make mistakes. But if you actually talk to any average adult that is willing to get into the classrooms and do these things with the students, I believe that they'll find out how real those adults are, that they have made those same mistakes. They maybe have not. But majority of our students really can relate to those lived experiences by the adults. So the frustration is creating the forum and the environment for the students to have those conversations, not just on a Zoom call, not whatever. So that is one of the reasons why we actually, we're really blessed to have someone to help us get into space, but to have a forum for the students to do it. And so in the classroom, I think it's the same thing. Having the teaching staff the ability to have the time to have those meaningful conversations.
Well, And it's interesting. So I was part of a research project a couple of years ago, and we were supposed to look at what technology needs do schools have, right? But then instead of going in there and saying, like, hey, would this fix it? Would this fix it? Just to go back and say, what do you need, right? What are your needs? And not say technology, but say, what are the needs from your schools? And I think the funding agency, I think, was a little frustrated because they wanted us to come back and say, here's the technology solution that will fix it all, right? And the reality is when we talk to them, technology in most of our conversations, we broke it down thematic, was, fourth or fifth, right? And this idea of being able to address not just things that can be solved through technology, but needing that piece, that support, the people, the community part around it, and just how important is community when it comes to education, supporting kids that you work with?
Well, I'll jump on that first. And community to me is much like family, right? Many times, and I can speak from personal experiences, my uncles, my aunts were those adults in my life. They weren't necessarily blood. I called many adults, older people than me that were taking the time to sit down, maybe to show me how to cut a piece of wood, how to cut back bushes in the yard. And it's those other family, the extended family, that I think matter. And I think teachers oftentimes are those students' extended family. And so if they don't have the time to be able to invest with them, extended family is probably the key.
I know community is a big part of the work that you do and try and create with your youth too.
Yes, community is a big part, and like you said, absolutely, feeling like family, being consistent, showing up in ways that they can relate to, so having those similar life experiences and not just going through the motion and just saying things, but actually just showing up.
Yeah, we were working with a school, and one of the teachers said, one of the things for the kids, the most important part, is just having a caring adult. And they said if they have one caring adult, there's a 50% greater chance, and this might not be statistical, but they said in their experience, a 50% greater chance of that kid succeeding. And if they have two, it jumps to 90%. And they're not saying two-parent homes, it has to be that. They're saying two adults in their life whatsoever, whether that's a parent, whether that's a grandparent, whether it's not, whether it's a teacher, and just that important role of having, like you both said, that person that they can turn to if they need that. Another thing we talk a lot about is reflective curriculum, right? And let's be honest, whether we're looking at STEM curriculum, history, whatever topic it is, it's usually not very reflective, right? And what impact do you think that has?
Well, I can give you technology scenarios. Yeah. It may not be directly, like, again, I appreciate you for having an IT guy on the panel. I'm coming at education from the biases of technology and engineering. I've actually had an adult and a staff person say, please take that video down. It was a robotics video. We were trying to get them inspired to talk about it. And then I thought it was really cool because I looked at the technology, but I didn't realize there was nobody in these crowds of audiences that looked like anybody in our classroom. And you're talking about 25 kids, and there wasn't one single person of color in that video, but that was a technology that we wanted them to have. And so that is what I would offer to you before you do the actual formal education side of it, is that those representations are critical to our students being able to believe in themselves. And we have to actually do a lot of the mapping to identify where they can plug in and, hey, we're going to start producing our own content, or we're going to start showing our success on the robotics fields, on the AI fields.
Yeah, well, and that's something we talked about with the youth this summer, right, is reflective of themselves. And how important is that? I know there was a number that showed that, I believe it's like 90% of curriculum, first of all, the vast majority of curriculum doesn't even include Indigenous history, or it's like this tiny little footnote, but the vast majority of it, even what's included in curriculum, is pre-1920, right? And just the impact that has on kids, seeing themselves completely absent. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Seeing themselves in the games that you design is very important, and also, like, there's parts of it that are experiences that they've had, and so that's important. But also, the learning aspect of it is fun and it's experiential. So I think those things are important to keep them engaged.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, we were at United Tribes Powwow 2 weeks ago, and there's a part where the voice comes on, and this little girl, she runs over, she's like, come here, listen to this. that's a Turtle Mountain voice, right? And so to hear themselves, to hear someone who reflects their community, I think one thing I was having a conversation with my son, often kids don't realize that they're missing from the curriculum until they see they're there. And then it's like this light bulb goes off like, why aren't we in here? Why aren't there more stories about us? Why is every story about, indigenous history have to do with broken treaties and the negative aspects, the Trail of Tears, those kind of things? What about all these other stories? And similar, we're having a conversation about also what about, whether it's Black scientists or coders or technologists or Native, technologists or historians or whatever that is, Latino, we're not seeing that in the curriculum, and that absence, of that aspect seems to be something that I know you're working on, both of you.
Even leaving stuff out is harmful. So some of the things that we know about our history or current times, if it's not reflected, if it's not there, I think we get angry and we just don't want to even have anything to do with it. So I see that in the youth that I work with and myself in school as well.
And you become desensitized over time, like any of us, right? You see the repeated patterns. So all of a sudden you don't even expect that you should be in them or should be in them. And so I think that's our duties as the adults in the room to be able to offer those opportunities. And hats off, I saw 7 Generations app. I've seen some other apps, and they were actually pretty incredible. And I'm very glad to see that type of EdTech is applications are coming out. I did want to just make one comment that as we differentiate between people being able to see themselves in the content, I think it's actually more important that we see them developing the content and being the coders and being the artists, being able to do these things. Because even if they do see themselves in some of the content, they don't capture the characteristics, the bone, the facial structures. It's just you pick a color, beige, brown, purple, whatever color you want to paint somebody. I think it's very important that we see the whole cultural influence in that, in addition to just the other biases that may fall into it. So my big hat's off to all the application developers out there creating these apps, because they have a huge job ahead of them. They also have a huge job themselves to transform themselves to include BIPOC and persons of color in these initiatives, even if it's to give suggestions, right? Innovation. Get an advisory board. It doesn't mean, as an entrepreneur, I understand, starting a nonprofit, I'm being an entrepreneur, create an advisory board. Get a Mondo Davison, get a Michael Wulf, get whoever on your advisory board to take a look at these things. Shanita, yeah, I'm sorry. My apologies. Get someone that you may know, or even if you don't know them, there's LinkedIn, there's many other areas and forums for you to be able to reach out, hand a business card, tap your phone, whatever it is, and just ask them. I'll bet you 9 times out of 10, unless they're extra busy that particular time you ask them to do it, they would do it.
And I'm interested because my thought on that is, I think that's really important, but it has to not just be performative. You know what I mean? And I think so often it's like, we need an indigenous voice. We need a Black voice. We want to check that box. And so what advice do you have for maybe folks who are looking to find that, who, because I think there's a lot of one thing. So we work with a lot of teachers, and a lot of teachers is in rural communities, or whether they're urban, setting, they might not be from those communities, and they want to do right by the students, but sometimes they're worried. They don't know how to say, I can relate in this way. And I think similarly for technology, right? Maybe I can't say to, how I can relate. What advice would you give to them? How do you start to build those inroads and networks?
I might go to you first, because I might have to think about that one. But off the cuff, I will say, it's much like many transformations. You have to decide how bad you really want it. If you really, really want to reach out, you will put yourself out there, as the kids say. You'll be a little bit more, little risk into the engagement, and you have to actually try. Because you have to not underestimate the power of the human being. Other human beings have all the same desires and passions and everything, but if you lead with your biases, you lead with the fear, I think a person like me is, even if you came at me wrong or used the wrong words, but I could feel and sense that you were genuine in your desire and you have a good explanation on why you want to engage with a person of color, I think that anybody in their right mind would actually offer themselves to you. So I think you have to be a little bit, get out of that comfort zone, get out of that safe zone, and try. Because if you don't try, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, and I know that's something too with indigenous communities too. There's a lot of, and I don't want to say resistance, but hesitancy, right? Because there's been a lot of times where, whether it's the government or it's education systems come in and say, we're here to fix all of the solutions in your communities and not understanding it. And can you talk just a little bit about that importance of understanding the challenges within the community? Well, just the challenges that your kids face. I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but what are some of the frustrations, too, that they come to you with? I know you've kind of established a relationship with the kids you work with. What are some of the frustrations? I asked you guys earlier what your frustrations are. What are some of the frustrations that they come to you with when it comes to school or education or any?
I think consistency and trust are, like, huge, like I said before, and trust is, like, so huge. Safety, just things that are going on in the community, the environment, like without thinking about those things and like expecting them to show up, like you just can't like expect for, to have them show up and not understand why they're not showing up, and to be consistent in reaching out and try different ways in reaching out.
Well, and the consistency, it reminded me, so we had a colleague who was working in a reservation, he was doing research, and he said he went to, and he was actually from there, he said, but the first time he went and he was knocked on some people's doors, and they didn't answer the door. And he knew that they were there, right? And so then he went back another time, and they didn't answer the door. And finally, the third time they answered the door over, a course of a couple weeks, and he said, I knew you were here. Why didn't you let me in the first place? And he said, because so often in these communities, right, the person talking about they live in a reservation where so much of it is research and we want to study this. And they said, we wanted to know that you would come back, that you were going to be here, that you meant it, right? And just that important, that consistency that you talk about, it's not just coming in with a solution, but, being willing to see it through to the end. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is a perfect segue. That, I think, in a nutshell, is what we see. We're dealing with adolescents in many cases in person, and they test you, right? Just like they would test the adults in their life. So they're testing you as a caring adult, whether or not you're going to be there for them when the going gets tough, or as they start to go along this transformation. And I think I'll use the word discipline, but being able to have the structure in place for the students and the expectations are set for them, so that many of our students, I believe that they get frustrated because they want to come in and game. They think that they can be on their phones or they can do all these other things, when really we're in an education scenario where that is not where they're focusing. We already know that they're not focusing. So what we've found is that I think the students come in with the misconception that, I can just come in this after-school program, do what I want because, my adult put me in this program, or it's supposed to be a good thing to do. But I will say that in reverse, they start to participate over and over and over again. And I've watched it over 3 years with one young man where, he came in like, I'm just doing this kind of, screw you type of, I'll use the right word.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Yeah, I'm just here. Yeah, exactly. In the third year, he caught fire. He came in the second year, so I think I'll just work on the software side. That's all I want to do. And then the next year, he's on fire creating and building the robots because he's seen us. We didn't give up, even during COVID. We went virtual as much as we could. We have staff that call them. We have volunteers that call them. Hey, are you coming back? It's starting next month. And so what we found is that the frustration from them is much like you says, we just want to see you come back. We just want to make sure you're vested partner in this relationship, in this contract, if you will, for us to be able to be successful in the future. And then they trust is there, and then they'll do what you advise them to do. It's like eating your vegetables, right? Drink water. Quit drinking pop. Soda.
Well, and I'm sure both of you have done this. Kids say, you say you can do this. They say, I can't, right? What do you say? Or I don't think I can do that. What do you say to kids that come to you and say, I don't think I can do that?
Try.
Is that before the smack on the back of the head, or no?
No.
Just kidding.
It's
No
so
violence.
familiar
No violence.
because this just happened yesterday. I had a kind of like a open time, and like they could bead or make a medicine pouch or something like that. And she kept saying, I'm so slow. I'm like, no, you're not. She's like, I'm just slow. And I'm like, no, you're not. Just try. And I was like, you know what? It's your first time. You're just learning. And if you make a mistake, just keep doing it. And then, of course, she made a mistake, and I'm like, it's okay. And I made a mistake, and I was like, look, I made a mistake too. And so she got into it, she kept doing it, and she kept trying, and now hopefully she's coming back today.
That scenario is all too real. I've seen that story many, many times. And I would say that the adult says, hey, let me show you. So having an adult that is partially equipped in the areas that we work in, or at least understands conceptually or can read the manual and say, oh, well, why don't we try it this way? And if not, guess what? That adult can go find the adult that actually knows how to do it and bring them to the table and ask the student, hey, come back at third period. I'm going to have someone here that's going to actually show you, or come back next week. I'll have that solved for you. And I think the students are willing to make those compromises, but having somebody to just say, here, let me show you, or let me get you some help.
Or just being there. And I like to have them do it themselves. I'll talk them through it, or I'll be doing the same thing. No, you do it too. I'm not going to do it for you. You do it. You have the experience, and I'll show you. I'll do it at the same time, so that they can.
And many times, too, we've had volunteers that come in and want to just take over, and then we have to intervene with that scenario and make sure that, hey, no, let them show it this. And then we have to actually sometimes teach the adults, because they're just big little people.
Right? Kids are the best at being like, I can't do it, and just hoping you'll do it for them. Like you said, Well, and I think what you brought up was so true too. That failure, right? That fear of failure. And if we're talking about STEM, or nobody ever gets anything right the first time. And I think there's this sense in schools of, failing is bad, right? But, whether it's highly technical, technology or calculus or beading, or just even, talking about smaller kids learning to read. No one understands it immediately, and failing is part of that. And I think taking that fear of failure out of it, like you're saying too, also showing, hey, I messed up too. It's not a bad thing. It's how we learn, right? Well, what's one thing that if you were in charge, right? What do you think needs to change? What would you change when it comes to current approaches to education when it comes to youth from your community, or just youth in general?
The loaded question, right? Shanita, would you like to go first? I can certainly throw my 2 cents in.
I think just being there, having people that look like them, that have had the same experiences, that can share that, being understanding about what they're going through, and some other words that I can't find right now.
So, if I had the silver bullet to slay the beast, I would have gone down that path. I believe that we can save the children by investing in the children. But as it relates to the entire education system, I think elevating the educators and the teachers, and then also whatever those support structures are behind them, whether it's pay or benefits, the time, smaller classrooms, and equip them with the understanding that technology is just a tool, right? The actual physical hardware, sometimes those implementations are misconstrued as, hey, we're going to give Chromebooks and iPads to every student. Look what a great thing that we did. Well, I know from personal experience, a couple of the schools that we experienced going into COVID, we run a Power Up IT program that teaches high school students about professional development and speakers. I would almost say that I heard a number like 80 to 85% of the students left their technology in their locker as soon as they knew that school was closing. And that was actually a big difficulty, right? They also know the ones that did take it home never turned them on. There was nothing there to keep them accountable. So if I had to change something, I would focus in on what are those incentives, what are those opportunities for the adults and the students, because I believe that the teachers, in some way, I fail because I can't get the kids to even come online. They're willing and ready to teach, but there's something there that's missing that if I could answer that question, I would. But just to make sure that it's not just the technology, it could be the apps and the gamification, and having the opportunity for the students to maybe do and perform different types of projects instead of the old classical, hey, this is this class from this time and that time.
Well, and I think part of that too, from the conversation about it, comes back to access, right? So we can give every kid technology, but if they don't have access at home, right? One of the schools we worked with, 36% of the kids had no home internet whatsoever. The vast majority in a lot of the urban communities that we work with, and a lot of Latino homes, a lot of the indigenous homes that we've worked with families, their home internet in many cases is the Android Wi-Fi that they're going to use as a hotspot, and that issue sometimes when we talk about technology is yes, we can give kids the technology, but that extra piece then of how can they access it? Because I was reading a number where it said, the vast majority of homes that have high-speed internet access probably already have a computer. And so finding ways to reach those youth in those spaces where, we're not giving more to the kids that already have enough, but finding ways that we can also reach the kids that need it the most, I think is a big part.
And if I can just, a small nugget of thought there is that, we sent all these kids home with all this technology. Did any of them take a keyboarding class? Were they already struggling? Were they able to do these things? You sent them all the technology, but you didn't give them the skills. It might have been better to, instead of giving them keyboarded devices or, go for more advanced technology. Many of the students, they might not have many of the essential needs at home, but they have a phone. They have a smartphone, and what they're used to is all the the being able to do these things with their hands very quickly. So it's also the type of technology, right? There's stratas and layers to this thing that the students many times, even in the most impoverished situations that may not have those things at home, sometimes they have access to technologies, but access at home, the whole Wi-Fi, internet, broadband, all that, there's just so many needs. And you're absolutely right. You could throw a dart at any of them, and they are absolutely 100% correct. And we haven't even talked about rural or the very, very lack of technology and access to technology, right? So I can only speak about city, urban type experiences.
I think that another part of it for my community is like believing in yourself, self-identity. There's a lot of healing that has to be done for us to even want to do certain things, to even be able to look to having a future. Am I going to live that long? Just things that maybe other people don't really think about. And so not being able to even think about having a future, or am I going to, live to be an adult, or those things, I don't think that a lot of people think about those things. So a lot of healing has to be done. A lot of identity has to be found.
Well, and that's a good one. Teacher I was talking to said, how am I going to get a kid who doesn't know where their dinner is going to come from to do their math homework, and understanding some of those things, some of those needs that has nothing to do with the classroom, in terms of that part of it. Why are they not doing it? Someone, a colleague of mine who used to be a teacher said, if a kid comes in and puts their head down on the desk and goes to sleep in my class, that means they feel it's a safe place to sleep. And instead of coming in and saying, get up, why aren't you doing this? Maybe that's the only place they feel safe doing that. And I think, like you said, that idea of having that kind of perspective shifts sometimes when you come back and say, yeah, they're not engaged, but maybe that's what they need right now.
Even at a different level is the ability to even get to where that education is at. Transportation still tends to be one of our bigger issues. And culturally, you may not want to walk across a particular block or an invisible line that people don't even realize, the uppers and lowers in North Minneapolis. There's DMZs where you just shouldn't be if you're not from that block, right? And so that is a very, one example, but getting students to get to the places so that they can actually get some of these experiences in person, I think is actually pretty critical. Transportation, as well as you were talking about rest and the safety of being able to sleep somewhere. Nutrition, I think, is not just food, right? Because we even made mistakes during our summer camp, was like, okay, you're gonna eat this pizza, you're gonna eat these chips, you're gonna eat these sodas, right? And water. Where we introduced fresh fruit or other opportunities, and we had a donation from General Mills. They gave us a bunch of food, but it was still one of those situations where they have to learn about those choices. So our approach is more holistic, the whole mind, body, and soul, so that we can tap into some of these gaps and disparities versus just saying, hey, you're gonna learn robotics and coding and then you go, right? It's much deeper, it's broader, and there are a lot of needs that transcend what I personally as an adult am equipped to do. I'm privileged, right? I come from never ever feeling like I was poor, although I lived in the projects. I grew up in the projects. I ate ham hocks and greens and everything and thought that that was the top food, right? And then you find out this is just the scourge of the leftover parts of the animal, right? And so long story short is there are so many needs that you can't solve them all. But what you can do is do the best that you can do as an individual. If you're an application developer, you're developing education technology, the best thing you can do, I believe, is try and put your heart into it. You just can't punch out at 4:30 and call it good. You know, you have to get that 8 o'clock meeting with that one person that might help you down the road. So it's a big job.
I think they should bring home ec back.
Right?
Because they
Financial
need,
literacy, too.
life skills. We need life skills, especially coming from historical trauma, intergenerational trauma, where we didn't learn things to teach our children and to teach our grandchildren without knowing hygiene, without knowing nutrition, and how to prepare food or what food is good or any of that. I mean, that has to do with like how your brain develops, how you think, how you feel, how you sleep, everything.
Well, and I want to turn it over to questions because I think we've had a great discussion, but I want to see, do we have questions? Yeah.
Is there anything being done to teach kids that they can actually go to college and finish college? Because a lot of these kids probably go all the way up to high school and they never think about college. So is there any kind of animation or video games or anything else that is being available to them to basically put it in the back of their head that one of the things that they have to do is go to college and possibly try to finish it?
I'll jump on that real quick, is that we have a Power Up IT program and we go into the high schools and we talk about going to college. We also talk about the options that I explained earlier. It's like you could be a dope entrepreneur and do these things, but you should also maybe consider going to college. And this is how you dissect which one is best for you so that you don't spend a lot of time going to a 4-year degree. You get into the 4-year degree and, I got to do it all over. So our goal is to try to encourage that earlier. We have a bubble in middle school and we bring in mentors and coaches from HBCUs, from Minnesota State, from the U of M, collegiates that actually partner with them. This summer we had a young lady from the U of M who was an astrophysicist major, normal looking woman, sitting with the kids, and then all of a sudden she brings out astronomy type based app. And the kids were shocked. And even to understand, like, I met an astrophysicist. I honestly still don't know what they do. I know they look at stars and, there's galaxies and all that, so, solar systems. But the fact that they are doing that, and she had the opportunity in a very informal way to talk about why did she go to college? What did she have to do to get to college? And she had an average person story. She was very gifted, but she was able to sit with a group of kids, and that particular class was not the top 10% of the class. Those kids came from just, hey, somebody either told them to be there or they had an interest and they didn't know what they were actually getting into. So I think those informal learning opportunities with people that look like them, that can share, and then going to a 4-year college. But we have to, I think, as adults too, we like options and the smorgasbord approach to things. We don't want to be just pigeonholed into one thing, and I think we got to start that dialogue earlier, so that they kind of get an idea of what they're actually interested in, what the leading part of their passion or purpose in life is going to be. And then they'll have a better chance of locking into potentially a 4-year degree. The other thing is also, I'm sure from the education perspective, trying to create partnerships and on-ramps into 4-year degree programs, like these big universities that we're talking about. But we also have small universities, small colleges that actually offer excellent curriculum and programs.
Encouraging high school kids to take PSEO classes.
Oh, yeah.
I have brought colleges in. I've taken students out to colleges. And then for the younger kids, just always giving them options and having them think about what they want to do when they get older.
We have time for one other question.
Just kind of going on what Michael was saying and the gentleman who asked the first question. College is great. I went there. It took me way too much longer than it should have. But coming from a reservation and having that struggle, college shouldn't be the golden ticket. It shouldn't be the measure of stress that's put on the Native youth. It should just be confidence and options and showing that support. So whether if it's game design, if you want to go into game design, you might not want a 4-year college, and that's fine. You're going to go out, you're going to get that real life experience. You're going to get involved with the gaming community. You don't have to go to college and be required to take all these extra classes, worrying about how you're going to pay for it. If you can just support the Native youth or the BIPOC community youth into just showing what they want to go for and help drive that message, I think that can really open up a bigger opportunity than having that gold standard be a 4-year college.
We've got some great chatter on the chat as well that agree that college isn't the only route into tech. Liz Tupper says that she's a college dropout who is a self-taught engineer. And Erie was saying that a 4-year college degree doesn't guarantee anyone anything. You've got a couple minutes if you want to.
Also a college dropout. Yeah.
I think they give us an extra minute. Did you have, or a few minutes? Did you have one or?
Oh, no, I'll let somebody answer the question. But I mean, you're right. I think you're spot on. I'm a college dropout. Does somebody want to?
Yeah. So I do let them know. Actually, there was a youth that was working in the program over the summer. Not my program, but a different program. Just letting him know that some college is equivalent to life experience, and then also just exactly what you said, touching on them being happy in what they're doing. You know, you don't have to make all this money. You can live very simple. As if you're happy, you have a job that you like going to, you're comfortable, and you don't need extra things or whatever it is that you need. And then also giving them different options. Like we went to Dakota OIC. It's Dakota now, but anyway, so taking them there, there's like classes you can get your serve safe in like a couple of days. They're just giving them different options so that they can make more money, but it's more important for you to be happy. So my brother told me either you can work for fulfillment or for money, and which one do you want? Because if you work for money, you may not be happy. But if that's what you want things, then do that. If you want fulfillment, then go into a field that you're going to be happy with.
I like going into a field where I can be happy and have money. And I think that's what many entrepreneurs oftentimes end up doing. And so from an innovative perspective, yeah, solving what messaging goes to the students. As you can tell, there's different strata, different layers, and different approaches to these things. So you just have to try.
And I'm going to give a big shout out to all the teachers and educators who don't go into it for all the money.
Yes.
But I think that's an important part too. Yeah.
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 I'm glad you said that, Maria. I've been sitting here from the back and watching the last panel on bringing culturally relevant material, and that's how we started this conversation. But it really transitioned into how are we going to support the teachers, the mentors, and as an EdTech entrepreneur, that problem, it's not intractable to me, but I'm really looking for my entry points there. And I think for our audience who's thinking about this as well, we've gotten some really good suggestions about advisory, not just performative, but real, bringing those voices into the room. But I think there's some big problems here, and we just touched on trauma at the end here, trauma-informed education, big deal, and I'm wondering also how education technology entrepreneurs can help with that. So anyway, great panel. Let's put our hands together for this wonderful group.